رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا. So, I guess I got the grade for you actually. I feel like I'm public enemy number one right now, interrupting everyone's fun. I told Hamza to cancel it, but I'll keep it brief, inshallah. I was going to start off with giving you guys some academic advice and telling you how to smash your exams, but I think I'm going to cut that part of the speech and I'm just going to go straight into the crux of it, inshallah. So, I've got 10 minutes to give you 5 years worth of advice. And wisdom is to learn from other people's experiences and other people's mistakes. So listen carefully to what I have to say. And I pray that when I'm giving you the advice that it's sincere, because only advice given from the heart is actually accepted by the heart. So I have 3 points for you to take home today. And if you hold true to these 3 points, then your time at university, inshallah, will be plain sailing and you will make friends for life, inshallah. So the first point, control your tongue and keep your ego in check. So all of you during university will say something that you regret. All of you will say something that you wish you could take back, but you can't take it back. And there's always going to be a clash of egos, and you're always going to engage in a debate or a heated discussion. And that's fine, because at university we come here to think and we come here to discuss things. But when it results in people having ill feelings towards each other, having an us and them mentality, then it can break relationships and it can break friendships. And it can cause a lot of fitna between people. And I've seen this happen many, many times. And you know, one of the pious predecessors of the past said that I wish my neck was a mile long, because then at least by the time the words reach my tongue, then I could at least stop them from coming out. And it's so true. You know, you should take a step out from yourself, from your own self, and have a look at yourself when you're discussing things with others. And you should assess what you're saying. Because if you find yourself having this burning desire to put someone in their place and to tell them where to go, then you need to remember that you're not doing something that's going to benefit them. And if you think about it, if you're just doing something to put someone in their place and to tell them what's right, then you haven't won the war. You've only won the battle. Because do you think someone's honestly going to listen to you once you've made a fool out of them, or once you've shamed them, or once you've made them feel bad in public? They won't listen to you. So the way to win people is to win their hearts. It's not to show them that you're right and they're wrong. And when you give advice sincerely. And give it in a way that you would give it to your own little brother or sister, or that you would like to receive it. And when you receive advice, receive it with humility. Because if you stand with someone, or if you think that you're better than that person, then they may not give you that advice again. And you may lose out on the fruits or the bounties of what they have to say. And you know, Ali radiallahu anhu said that you should judge the speech before you judge the speaker. And that is something that we should all do when we approach everyone that we speak to. And we don't want to turn up to the day of judgment, and we don't want to find something that we said to someone, and we forgot that we even said it, and then Allah brings it forward on the day of judgment, and then it's used as an accusation against us, as a proof against us. So be careful with your speech and control your ego. The second thing that I have to say, and this is something that's very easy to fall into whilst you're at university, but do not commit shamelessness. And stay away from this at all costs. Because this is the easiest way to burn all your good deeds, and it's the easiest way to ruin your relationship with your Lord. And what do I mean by shamelessness? I don't think I need to spell it out. I mean immoral acts or lewd behavior. And the reason why I advise you so strongly against this is because you will get burnt. If you play with fire, you will get burnt. Your heart will be scarred, your heart will become hard, and you will have regrets for the rest of your life. And you will have this overburdening guilt, and it will only grow and grow and grow until you leave this action. And it will give you an anxiety in your heart. And if you do commit these acts, then don't you dare ever commit them in public. Don't you dare ever transgress the bounds of Allah in public. Don't you dare ever bring other people to shamelessness through your acts. And if you don't have enough respect to do that for Allah, and if you don't have enough respect to do that for others, then at least have some respect for yourself by not committing these acts in public. Because one of the worst things that you can do is to actually expose the sins that Allah has actually hidden from you. And if you see a brother or a sister sinning openly, then do not expose his or her sins, because maybe Allah has concealed them for a reason, and maybe Allah will conceal yours on the Day of Judgment, inshallah. And the best way to protect yourself from this is to keep good company. And if this is something that you're guilty of, don't despair, never lose hope in the mercy of Allah. Because all of us commit sins, and all of us will continue to sin. But it's what we do after we commit these sins that is important. And the problem becomes when these sins become a habit, because then you no longer have any regret with regards to these sins. And then they become a part of who you are. And this is a sign of a hard heart, because when someone has a hard heart, all they aim to do is fulfill every desire that they have. And they become a slave to all their desires. And let me give you an example. So, when you have all these desires and you are a slave to all these desires, you have multiple masters. You will constantly be trying to please everyone. Your career, your family, your wealth, everything in your life, you will be chasing after it. But if you make yourself the slave to the one who is the master of all of these things, then you have mastered this dunya. Then you have truly mastered this world. And then you will find a peace and tranquility in your heart that nothing can buy. Not family, not friends, not wealth, not your career. There is a hole in your heart that can only be filled by the remembrance of Allah. And when you have that remembrance of Allah living within the four walls of your heart, you will find that tranquility in your life. And this is one of the best ways to deal with anxiety and depression and sadness. And you will see that people who have anxiety and depression and sadness, they have this imbalance in their life. Because the thing that they put at the pinnacle of their life isn't strong enough to hold everything together. And only the love of Allah is strong enough to do that. So, ask Allah for His forgiveness. Stand on your prayer mat, fall to your knees, and raise your hands and say to Allah in sorrow. Because that is one of the most difficult conversations that you will have with Allah. But it will be one of the most priceless, and it will be one that you remember on the Day of Judgment. And Sufyan al-Thawri understood this well. Because what he said was that on the Day of Judgment, I would rather be judged by Allah than be judged by my own parents. And this is the sign of a man who understood the rahmah of Allah. And my final point, and if you take anything home from today, take this point home. Because it applies to all of us. Be concerned for the ummah and have a genuine love for one another. This is the most final and most important piece of advice that I have to share with you before I leave. Support one another however you can. At the end of the day, you're all on the same boat. You're all going through the same struggle. There's not one hardship that you're going through that someone else in this room isn't going through. And you all share the same testimony. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. That link between all of you in this room is thicker than blood. That link between all of you is the reason why when you see another Muslim on the streets and you greet him or he or she gives you salams, that you immediately fall in love with that person. Or there's a connection between you and that person. Because of that love that you have between yourself and Allah, and therefore yourself and the other person. And this doesn't just extend to academics. By all means, do the best that you can to help each other. No one should be failing exams. No one should be deregistered when we have each other. But this should extend to your friends, and I mean genuine love for each other. I know a brother that used to pray, every morning when he used to get up in the morning, he used to pray 2 rak'ah, and he used to make dua for all the finalists by names. And he used to do this for 2 months every morning. I know another brother who gave charity on behalf of all the brothers and sisters by name, before their exams. I know another brother who wasn't able to give. He went to this event and he wasn't able to give to the children of Syria. But all he thought that, at least if I fast on Mondays and Thursdays, then Allah will at least accept my dua for me. And why is it that I give you these examples? There's a reason why I talk about these examples. Because these people exist amongst you in this room. This is the company that you are amongst. And this is the company that you should try your hardest to keep. And do you honestly think that Allah will fail these people? Do you honestly think that Allah will fail someone who is trying his best to actually look after someone else? And if you ask Allah to broaden your shoulders, then mountains will become like feathers. Allah says, "La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha." There is no burden that will be placed, there's no burden that any of you can't handle. So know that when you are being put through a trial, when you are being put through some fitna, then it is only a means of purification for you. And what is the meaning of fitna? The meaning of fitna is when you put a piece of metal through some burning furnace, and it goes through some really high temperatures and deep pressure. And that is what Allah does to us when He tests us throughout this life. And this is the power of faith. And this is the most important thing in our lives. This faith that we have in our chest, there's nothing more valuable than this. If you don't have clothes on your back, or food in your stomach, or a roof over your head, at least you have your Islam. And you know, Sheikh Abdullah Hassan earlier, he mentioned a few of these points. And I'll finish very briefly, because there are people that I started medicine with, and they were Muslims when we started. And now, today, they are no longer Muslims. As Iman has left their heart. And I mean, they are explicitly, they say they are no longer Muslims. They actively campaign against Islam. So none of us have the guarantee that tomorrow we will be Muslims. Just because we were born Muslims doesn't mean that we will die Muslims. And you know, Hassan al-Basri was tested on his deathbed. Shaitan came to him and he said, give up your religion, give up your religion. And all his students were standing there and they were saying to him, say the shahada, but none of them could see the shaitan. And he was saying, la, no, no. And they all thought that he didn't want to say the shahada. But in reality, he was fighting with the shaitan who came to him on his deathbed and said, give up your religion. And this is one of the greatest pious predecessors of the past. And at least if you're not going to cherish this Islam in your heart for yourself, at least cherish it for your children. Because that is the greatest inheritance that we have to give. And that is the inheritance of the prophets. And when Ibrahim alayhi salam was made the Imam amongst the people, when Allah said to him, you have become an Imam amongst the people, what did he say? He said, وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي. He said, what about my progeny? And that means us here today. He had this foresight. He was thinking forward 2,000, 3,000, however many years ahead. And Allah has accepted his dua. And you know, we live in a times where we can't guarantee that our children will be Muslim because there's so many trials and tribulations around us. But you have to ask Allah sincerely, and you have to do the best that you can do, so that on the day of judgment, you are not held to account that you planted that seed of disbelief in your progeny. And this is what the Sahaba at the Battle of Badr understood. Because if the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ died on that day, then we would not be here. We would not be Muslims today. And that is why they gave everything and they sacrificed everything, and that's what we talked about earlier. They put everything on the line. Because they knew that if they died that day, then Islam would not continue. And I leave you with my final point. Today, as Muslims, you know, you get funny looks because you're a Muslim. Or you get attacked because you're a Muslim. Or you have to defend yourself because you're a Muslim. And this is similar to the time of the second battle of Islam, the second great battle of Uhud. When the Prophet ﷺ was hit directly in the face with an arrow. Now think about this very carefully. Allah allowed His messenger, the one that He loves the most, to be hit directly in the face by an arrow. And he was bleeding from his mouth. But Allah allowed this to happen because He wanted to test the people. And how did this test the people? There were three groups. There was one group at the back who was worried about the war booty. And all they were preoccupied with was the wealth of this world. And there were another group at the front, and they were fighting aimlessly, and all they did was continue to go head on, and they had no strategy. And then there was another small group, and this is the group that we need to be amongst in this dunya. It was the group that came towards the Prophet ﷺ and protected him, and did everything they could to protect him. And what does that mean to us today? It means to stand firm upon the Sunnah and the Quran. So if you cherish this religion, then protect it with everything that you have in your heart. And do your best to pass it on and share it with everyone else. And these are the three final points that I leave you with tonight, inshallah. So may Allah bless you all. Honestly, I feel like I'm at home here. I feel like I'm amongst family. And I'm not going anywhere. I'll still be here hopefully as an F1 next year. But may Allah bless you all. May Allah allow you to continue in the good deeds that you do. And may Allah allow us to meet in a in an even better gathering than this in Jannah, inshallah. So, and I'll leave you all for tonight, inshallah.